I never thought the smell of cinnamon and vanilla could break my heart, but it did. My name is Joy Martinez, and I used to believe that baking could heal anything, until the day my ex-boyfriend, Caleb, stole my recipe and made the whole world think it was his. We met 5 years ago at a food truck festival. I was there with my tiny stall, Sweet Joy, selling peach cobbler and lemon cream pies. Caleb was running a burger stand, struggling to keep his grill lit. I let him borrow my lighter, and somehow, we ended up sharing a soda and talking about dreams. He said he wanted to open a restaurant someday. I told him I just wanted people to taste something they'd never forget. We moved in together a year later, in a shoebox apartment in Richmond. Our kitchen barely fit the both of us, but I'd spend hours perfecting my morning cloud, a soft, airy croissant filled with sweet cream cheese, a drizzle of honey, and my secret spice mix. Caleb used to call it my presidential pastry. I'd laugh and say, "Yeah, right, like the White House eats carbs." But then everything changed. I remember the night he asked me if he could share it with a friend of his in the restaurant business. "Just a taste," he said, "for feedback." I trusted him. I wish I hadn't. A month later, we broke up. He said I was too obsessed with baking, too distracted, not present in the relationship. I cried for 3 days straight. Then I saw it. A viral video. Caleb, on national TV, holding my pastry, calling it the revolution roll, saying it came to him in a dream. My hands shook, my mouth went dry. I stared at the screen, feeling like someone had taken my soul and wrapped it in shiny foil for profit. My phone buzzed with friends texting, "Didn't you make that?" Yes. Yes, I did. But I wasn't going to cry again. I was going to feed someone bigger than the audience Caleb lied to. I was going to feed the President of the United States. They say revenge is best served cold, but mine was going to be warm, flaky, and unforgettable. After the shock wore off, I replayed that interview a dozen times. Caleb stood there, grinning, in a chef's coat he never earned, describing textures and flavors he barely understood. "The revolution roll," he said, "my signature creation, inspired by my southern roots and a dream I had in college." He'd never even taken a baking class. He barely knew how to separate egg yolks. But he knew me. He knew my heart, my recipes, and apparently how to trademark something that wasn't his. I searched the database. Sure enough, he'd filed for rights to the name and formula. I felt like I'd been robbed twice, once as a girlfriend and again as a creator. I wanted to scream, but instead I baked. I shut my phone off. I turned on my old kitchen radio and drowned the news out with the hiss of butter on a hot pan. I recreated my pastry, but this time I made it even better. I added a citrus zest to the filling, thickened the cream cheese with whipped mascarpone, and changed the flour-to-butter ratio for the flakiest finish imaginable. It was still my morning cloud, but this one floated higher. That night, as I stared at the golden tray cooling on my windowsill, I had a wild thought. What if someone important tasted this? Someone untouchable by viral lies? The idea haunted me. I didn't have connections, but I had hustle. I started small, sent samples to local events, dropped off boxes at city offices with handwritten notes, no name, no brand, just a flavor. People remembered. I started getting calls from catering managers, asking if I could deliver more of those heavenly things. Word spread fast. Within a month, my pastries were requested at a political fundraiser downtown. I didn't know who'd be attending, but I knew one thing. Someone in that room would taste the truth. And maybe, just maybe, destiny would show up in a navy blue suit and a Secret Service badge. The fundraiser was at the Whitmore Hotel, that kind of velvet-draped place where everyone wore watches worth more than my car. I showed up in my mom's old blazer, balancing a silver tray wrapped in linen. No logo, no business card, just my pastries, arranged like edible poetry. The event was packed. Waiters zigzagged through the room with champagne flutes and crab cakes, while security guards hovered in every corner. I wasn't technically on the list, I wasn't even officially catering. I'd gotten in thanks to a favor from an old friend who owed me after I helped bake her wedding cake on 24 hours' notice. "You didn't hear this from me," she said, slipping me a pass, "but someone from the president's staff might be dropping by tonight." My heart thudded. This was it. I made my way to the far side of the ballroom, near the media table. I opened the linen slowly, like revealing treasure, and watched as a woman in a black suit eyed the tray. "What are those?" she asked. "Just a little something I make," I said, smiling. "Want one?" She picked it up carefully, took a bite, and her eyes fluttered, literally fluttered, like something inside her had just awakened. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's dangerous." Within minutes, I had a crowd. People started whispering. "Where did these come from? Is this from Caleb Fisher's bakery?" I bit my tongue. Hard. I didn't want my name tangled in his shadow. Not yet. Then I saw him. A tall man in a grey suit with a red lapel pin walked in, flanked by 2 Secret Service agents. He wasn't the president, not yet, but he was the chief of staff, the guy whose job it was to taste test the world before it reached the commander-in-chief. He took one look at my tray and walked straight toward it. "May I?" he asked, already reaching. I nodded. He took a bite, then another. His face went blank for a second, like his mouth was trying to believe what it was tasting. And then, just like that, he asked for my card. I didn't have one, so I gave him the only thing I could, a napkin with my name, number, and 3 words scribbled in red ink. "I don't steal recipes." The napkin felt stupid the second I handed it to him. Unprofessional, childish even. But I was so tired of watching thieves eat from tables they never built. I stood there, clutching my empty tray like a shield, convinced I'd ruined whatever tiny sliver of a chance I had. But the man, Mr. Rowland, I'd later learn, just stared at that napkin. Then gave me a look I couldn't quite read, somewhere between suspicion and curiosity. He folded it neatly, slid it into his inner jacket pocket, and gave me a single nod. Then he walked away. That was it. No thank you. No, we'll be in touch. Just a nod. I went home that night and cried into a dish towel. I'd used the last of my imported vanilla, skipped 2 shifts at the diner to prepare for this event, and now I was back in my studio apartment with $27 in my checking account and a heart that refused to give up. 3 days passed. Nothing. On the 4th day, I came home to find a white envelope wedged under my door. No stamp, no name. Just my address written in blocky black ink. Inside was a letter on official-looking paper. "Joy Martinez, we'd like to invite you to a private tasting event hosted at the East Capitol Dining Hall this Friday. No press, no public, just select chefs and staff. Dress appropriately. Come hungry." There was a phone number at the bottom. No signature. I nearly dropped it. I read it 3 times just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Was this real? Was I actually being invited to cook for someone at the White House? I didn't know what private tasting even meant. Was it for a party? A hiring process? A test? All I knew was I had 3 days to prepare and 0 answers. I called the number. A woman picked up and asked, "Ms. Martinez?" I said yes. "Your security clearance begins tomorrow. You'll receive a packet with protocols. Don't bring anything metal. Your ingredients will be screened. Be ready." Be ready. I laughed after I hung up. I hadn't felt ready for anything in years. But this I was born for. And Caleb, he had no idea I was coming. Friday came faster than I expected, and with it came nerves I didn't even know I had. My hands, which could fold pastry dough blindfolded, now trembled as I laced up my shoes. I'd gone with black slacks, a clean white button-down, and my grandma's gold locket. Something to remind me who I was before Caleb rewrote my story. The security van picked me up at 6 a.m. sharp. Inside were 2 other chefs, one from Boston, another from New Orleans. Both men. both carrying branded duffel bags with embroidered logos. Me? I had my pastries wrapped in biodegradable parchment, tucked carefully inside a recycled canvas tote with a small lavender sachet to hold the scent. We were dropped off at a side entrance of the East Capitol dining hall. Not the actual White House, but close enough that I could feel the pulse of power humming in the marble floors. There were guards at every corner, earpieces, badge scanners, metal detectors. My tote was inspected by 2 agents, swabbed for chemicals, scanned, and then finally handed back to me with a single nod. I was led into a massive industrial kitchen where 6 prep stations were set up. Each one had stainless steel counters, top-tier equipment, and a name card. Mine read, Martinez. I stood there for a moment, soaking it in. Me, in this room. A woman in a grey suit stepped forward and addressed us all. You'll each prepare a single dish, nothing more. The tasting will begin at 11. You will not speak to the panel unless spoken to. You will not photograph or record anything. If selected, you will be contacted. If not, you'll be escorted out. Simple enough. Except my hands were still shaking. I laid out my ingredients slowly. Each item labeled, fresh, and pre-measured. Cream cheese infused with citrus, wildflower honey, my spice blend, which I'd kept in an unmarked glass jar, taped shut. At 10:58 a.m., the door opened. They walked in, 3 men and 2 women, all dressed sharply. One of them was Roland. Another wore a small flag pin I recognized immediately from every press conference in the last year. The president. He was here. For this. For us. For me. I steadied my breath, and with it, I pulled the first tray of morning clouds from the oven. The aroma hit the room like a slow tidal wave of truth. And this time, no one else could take the credit. I don't know what heaven smells like, but that kitchen came close. The moment I cracked open the oven door, a wave of sweet butter, citrus, and warm spice lifted into the air like it had been waiting years to be free. Even the other chefs looked over. One of them raised an eyebrow. Another muttered, "Damn." I didn't smile. Not yet. I plated 3 pastries on a simple white dish. No garnish, no drizzle. Just the golden, flaky cloud I'd spent years perfecting. The cream inside had set beautifully. Not runny, not stiff. Just right. I set it down at my station and stepped back, hands folded in front of me like I'd rehearsed. The judges moved in silence, 1 dish at a time, no reactions, no comments, just forks and faces and little notebooks. My heart thumped in sync with their footsteps. Then they got to me. Mr. Rowland was first. He nodded politely, sliced into the pastry, and took a small bite. Then he stopped. You know that pause people make when they're hit with a memory? That half second where they're not chewing anymore, just remembering something warm, maybe even painful. That happened. He took another bite, then glanced at the president, and that's when it happened. The president of the United States stepped forward, quiet, calm, a man who had likely tasted the finest food on earth. And he reached for my pastry. He didn't say a word. He took a bite. Then he closed his eyes. Not the polite, political kind. No, this was different. His face softened. He didn't even finish the rest of the slice. He just looked at me and said, "What do you call this?" I swallowed hard. "It's called the morning cloud." He looked at me again. "It tastes like something honest." I almost cried right there. One of the women scribbled something in her folder. The others moved on. The whole moment lasted maybe a minute, but it cracked open something inside me. Not just pride. Proof. This wasn't just pastry anymore. It was justice. And just as I started to breathe again, someone tapped me on the shoulder. "Excuse me," said the grey-suited woman who'd briefed us earlier. "You're needed in the next room." "Why?" I asked. She just smiled. "They want to talk to you. Alone." I followed her down a narrow hallway, heart hammering in my chest like it was trying to claw its way out. The other chef stayed behind, still plating, still hoping. But me, I was being led somewhere quieter, somewhere deeper. We passed through a door marked Private Authorized Staff Only. The air felt colder, stiller. No perfume of baked goods here, just leather, oak, and seriousness. Inside the room stood 3 people: Mr. Rowland, a woman I hadn't seen before with steel grey hair pulled tight into a bun, and the president himself. There were no microphones, no cameras, just a long mahogany table and a tray of my pastries. Untouched, except one that had clearly been devoured. I stayed by the door. "You can sit," Rowland said, motioning to a chair across from them. I did. The grey-haired woman spoke first. "Miss Martinez, your pastry contains a flavor we've never quite encountered before. We'd like to understand something." She slid a notepad in front of her. "Is this recipe your original creation?" "Yes, ma'am," I replied. "Completely mine." The president leaned in. "And what inspired it?" I hesitated. "How do you explain betrayal as an ingredient?" "I created it during a time I thought I was building a future with someone," I said carefully. "I believed in love and partnership, but he believed in shortcuts. He stole it, branded it, made a name off it. And yet," Rowland said, "this version tastes better." I nodded. "Because I made it without compromise." The president sat back. "Miss Martinez, there are talks happening. We're considering revamping the state dinner menus. Something more personal, more American in spirit, honest. We want to work with a chef who brings not just technique, but truth." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me?" I asked, barely above a whisper. The woman smiled. "Not just want, we need you." The president added, "But before we proceed, there's something we must ask." He reached into a folder and slid a photo across the table. My heart stopped. It was Caleb, in a chef's coat, standing under a banner that read, "State Dessert Partner, Fisher Foods." The president looked at me. "Would you be willing to stand opposite this man?" I stared at the photo like it was radioactive. Caleb's smug smile. That same chef's coat he wore on TV. The Fisher Foods logo embroidered on the pocket like he actually earned it. My hands curled into fists under the table. I hadn't seen him in over a year. Not in person, anyway. Just in headlines, interviews, magazine features, rising culinary star. The Southern genius, America's new favorite taste. My taste. And now he was standing on the edge of the exact same opportunity, the White House. I looked up slowly. The president raised his brow. "We can remove him. Legally, it's doable. But it would be messy, loud. The press would get involved." The grey-haired woman added, "Or we can keep him. And you'd be placed on the same project. Side by side, 2 finalists. One will be chosen to oversee the state dinner rebranding. The other steps away." They were giving me a choice. I could take the quiet win, let them fire him and move on in peace. Or I could stare him in the face, bake circles around him, and leave no doubt. And you know what? I was done being quiet. "I'll face him," I said without blinking. "Put us in the same room, the same kitchen, the same conversation. I want everyone to see the difference." Rowland smiled faintly. "Bold." "No," I said. "Necessary." They nodded. Documents were signed. I was briefed about the upcoming schedule, joint tastings, private sessions, even a televised final event. They'd call it A Taste of America, the final plate. It would air next month. I left the room numb, but clear. As I stepped back into the main hallway, I passed a bulletin board full of press clippings. One photo caught my eye. Caleb, holding a plated dessert and shaking hands with a congressman. I stared at it for a moment, then reached into my bag. I pulled out a folded napkin, the same kind I used for samples. On it, I scribbled one line in red ink and tacked it right next to the photo. "One of us stole the flavor. The other is the flavor." Let them wonder what that meant. The truth was coming. And this time, I had the whole country watching. I didn't expect to see him that soon. But the very next morning, I walked into the Capitol Culinary Suite, a high-security kitchen reserved for official tastings. And there he was. Caleb. He was standing by the marble counter, sipping black coffee like he owned the place. Hair slicked back, brand new apron, the words Fisher Foods stitched across his chest like a badge of honor. He turned when the door opened and did a double take when he saw me. And I swear, for the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. I walked past him without a word and took my station. No smile, no nod, just the clatter of my tote bag hitting stainless steel. I unpacked my ingredients slowly and deliberately, letting the silence stretch. He kept glancing over, trying to read me like he used to. But the version of me he knew, she was gone. A woman in a navy pantsuit entered and clapped her hands. "Welcome, chefs. You'll each prepare your proposed dessert for the upcoming state dinner series. This is not a competition yet, just an initial round for review. Plates will be anonymous. You'll have 90 minutes. Caleb stepped forward, his voice too smooth. Any special requests? Allergies? Preferences? The woman smiled politely. Number, just give us the best version of you. He chuckled. Then they're in for a treat. I didn't respond. I was too focused on measuring my flour, zesting my oranges, whipping the mascarpone. The scent of his burnt sugar and store-bought vanilla filled the air halfway through, trying to compete with the soft, honeyed warmth rising from my oven. At the 89th minute, our trays were plated, identical white dishes, identical presentation rules, but only one of them had soul. The judges arrived quietly, tasted silently, took notes. Then they left. No scores, no comments, just 2 name tags placed beside the trays. Candidate A and Candidate B. When they were gone, Caleb turned to me. "I didn't know you'd make it this far," he said, voice low. I finally looked at him. "I was always this far," I said. "You just took the shortcut." His jaw tightened. "Joy, Don't," I said, wrapping my tray. "Save it for the cameras." Because I already knew. The real dish wasn't what they tasted today. It was what came next. They called it a taste of America, but it felt more like a courtroom. 3 weeks later, the final event was staged on the White House South Lawn under a massive white tent, decked with floral centerpieces and velvet ropes. The guest list: senators, ambassadors, veterans, journalists, and one very well-dressed First Lady. Cameras buzzed, drones hovered, and the buzz was electric. Caleb arrived in a tailored cream suit with his publicist glued to his side. He waved to the cameras like a celebrity on a red carpet. Me? I wore a navy dress, my apron tied in a soft bow at my waist, and my grandma's locket around my neck. I didn't need flash. I needed focus. We weren't allowed to speak to the crowd. Each of us would present one signature dessert to be anonymously voted on by 100 guests, including a golden vote from the First Lady herself. It was meant to be symbolic, a celebration of American talent. But for me, it was war. I baked the morning cloud in front of them, folded the dough, piped the filling, brushed the tops with egg wash as people leaned over the ropes whispering, "That smells amazing." Caleb was already plating. Something with chocolate ganache and edible gold leaf, dressed to impress. But mine made people pause, close their eyes, smile without even tasting yet. When the bell rang, servers whisked our trays away, labeling them Chef A and Chef B. The crowd tasted. Murmurs rose. I watched their expressions closely. Raised brows, thoughtful nods, lips pursed and then slowly curled. Then came the vote. A long, slim box was brought to the front. Each guest dropped a token inside, silently choosing their winner. The First Lady stood last, elegant, poised. She held her token for a moment, and then gently dropped it in, The host took the stage and opened the box. Caleb's face tightened. His smile dimmed. Because the tokens weren't even close. 73 for Chef A, 27 for Chef B. And the golden vote, held up high, with a knowing smile, went to Chef A. They pointed to me. The crowd erupted. For a second, I couldn't move. My feet felt rooted. My chest swelled. It wasn't just victory. It was validation. I hadn't just reclaimed my recipe. I'd fed it to the highest office in the land. And now, the whole world knew whose flavor it really was. The applause was still ringing in my ears when I stepped backstage. My hands were dusted with flour, and my cheeks ached from smiling. But inside, I was thunder. I thought Caleb would slip out quietly, pride in tatters and headlines turning cold. But no, he was waiting for me, leaning against the craft service table like it was some kind of throne, still in his pristine suit, still wearing that arrogant smirk, like he hadn't just been outvoted by a landslide. "Congrats," he said, like the word tasted sour in his mouth. "You got your crowd." I didn't stop walking. "Joy," he called after me. "Wait." I turned slowly, not for him, but for the girl I used to be, the one who gave him her ideas, her trust, her kitchen. "I just want to talk," he said, stepping forward. "Just you and me." I crossed my arms. "Make it quick." He rubbed the back of his neck, that same move he used when he got caught lying about forgetting our anniversary. "Look, I messed up. I was stupid, but I never thought it would blow up like this. I needed something to get my foot in the door. So you used me," I said flatly. "No," he said quickly. "I believed in you. I still do. That's why. Look, I've got an offer." I actually laughed. "You're offering me something? After all this?" "Let's open something together," he said, eyes wide. "You and me. Full transparency. We do it right this time. You bring the soul, I bring the branding. We could kill it." I stepped closer. "You stole my soul and branded it for yourself. You didn't believe in me. You bet against me, and lost." He tried again. "Joy, come on. I know how this world works. You need someone like me." I smiled then, a calm, unshakable smile. "No, Caleb," I said. "You need someone like me." He blinked, caught off guard. "I just fed the First Lady. You fed your ego." I turned and walked away, this time without looking back. Because there are moments in life when you don't need to scream. You don't need to prove. You just need to rise, like dough in a warm oven. And I was rising, faster than he could ever imagine. 2 days after the event, I was back in my tiny apartment, curled up on the couch in flour-streaked sweats, eating cereal out of a mug. My phone had been buzzing non-stop. Press interviews, endorsement offers, bakery investors, even a podcast about female foodpreneurs. I hadn't answered most of them, not because I wasn't grateful, but because I needed a minute to breathe. Then the call came. It wasn't from an unknown number or a blocked ID. It was just a quiet, regular-looking DC area code. I let it ring once, twice, and something told me to pick up. "Hello," a warm voice answered. "Miss Martinez?" "Yes?" "This is Michelle Hammond. I'm the White House culinary director. I wanted to personally thank you for what you created at the tasting event. We haven't seen a reception like that in years." My throat tightened. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm calling," she continued, "because we'd like to offer you a full-time role as the executive dessert consultant for all official state events." I sat up straight. Sorry, did you say full-time?" "Yes. Your recipe, the Morning Cloud, will become a staple item on our diplomatic menu. You'll help design seasonal variations, train staff, and collaborate with chefs from visiting nations." I looked down at my chipped mug of cereal. Me. From a rental kitchen with broken tiles and flickering lights, to this. "I'd be honored," I finally whispered. "Wonderful," she said. We'll send over the official paperwork, security clearance forms, and housing information. Housing? Yes, she said. You'll be relocated to an executive residence near Capitol Hill. Fully covered. You'll have your own test kitchen, and we'll arrange for press coordination if you're ready to go public. Go public. The phrase hit me like powdered sugar in the wind. Until now, most people didn't know who had won. The public tasting was filmed, but my name hadn't been released. This was my moment to step forward, or to stay anonymous, safe behind flavor. I hung up and stared out the window. Caleb had built a brand on my silence, but I'd built a legacy on truth. It was time the world knew the baker behind the bite. I didn't plan some grand announcement, no PR team, no flashy logo reveal, just me, my story, and a single photo. I posted it on my nearly forgotten Instagram account, the one I hadn't used since Caleb and I broke up. The last post had been a blurry pic of cinnamon rolls in my old oven with the caption, "Still rising." This new one was different. A photo of my hand holding the morning cloud on a white plate. No filters, no fancy lighting, just truth. The caption, "He stole my recipe and fed the world. I fed the First Lady. This is what happens when you don't give up." Within an hour, it exploded. People remembered. Friends from culinary school tagged each other. Former co-workers messaged me saying, "We knew that was yours." Bakers reposted it. Journalists picked it up. By midnight, 3 news outlets had written think pieces on the quiet rise of Joy Martinez. I turned my phone on silent and went for a walk. My neighborhood hadn't changed. Same cracked sidewalks, same barking dog behind the chain-link fence. But something in me had. I walked past a cafe window and froze. Caleb was on TV again, but this time it was different. The Chiron read, "Famous chef accused of stealing signature recipe from ex-girlfriend." His face looked tight, uncomfortable, defensive. I stepped closer and caught a soundbite. "I've always been inspired by Joy. Her talent is undeniable. I thought we were building it together." Liar. Even now he was spinning the narrative, trying to soften the edges, protect his image. But people weren't buying it this time. I scrolled through the comments on my post when I got home. "You deserve everything coming your way." "Chef Caleb better sit down. Joy's the real star." "Where can we buy the morning cloud?" That last one stuck with me, because maybe feeding the First Lady wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the beginning. I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor on a blank page. Business plan draft. Sweet Justice by Joy Martinez. Let them taste what truth really bakes like. By the end of that week, I had a logo, a business license, and a waiting list longer than a senator's speech. Sweet Justice. It wasn't just a name. It was a mission. A bakery built on everything I'd once been told was too emotional, too soft, or too simple. I opened it in the same neighborhood where I first learned to bake, just a block from the apartment where I'd cried over burnt crusts and watched my dreams swirl down the drain with dishwater. Now, those same streets smelled like orange zest and hope. On opening day, we sold out in under 2 hours. People lined up around the block for the morning cloud. Local news covered it like a red carpet event. Some cried when they took their first bite, not because it was just good, but because they knew the story. A food blogger wrote, "It's not just a pastry, it's a statement. Every bite says you can't erase the truth." I hired women who had been overlooked. Single mothers, formerly incarcerated bakers, students with no degrees but dreams. Our aprons read, "We rise together." 2 weeks in, I got an email with the subject line, "White House, urgent request." It wasn't a mistake. They wanted a custom dessert for the upcoming global peace dinner, something bold, unique, and unmistakably American. They wanted me. I worked for 3 nights straight, created something new, a red, white, and gold-layered tart with a honey-orange glaze, finished with edible flowers and a cardamom shortbread base. I called it Unity. The night it was served, I didn't attend. I chose to stay back and watch it on TV with my team. All of us crammed in the bakery kitchen, cheering every time a fork lifted. Then the camera cut to the president, holding the dessert up for the toast. He said, "Crafted by Joy Martinez, proof that flavor, like truth, rises when given the chance." I covered my face and laughed until I cried. Because somewhere out there, I knew Caleb was watching too, and this time, the world wasn't asking who made it. They already knew. I was dusting powdered sugar over a tray of lemon tarts when the bell over the bakery door chimed. It was late, just after 7 p.m., and most of the staff had gone home. I looked up, expecting a regular, maybe someone picking up a late order, but it was him, Caleb, standing there like he hadn't just watched his legacy crumble under the weight of a stolen recipe. He wasn't in his chef whites or tailored suits, just jeans, a hoodie, and eyes that looked tired, defeated. "Hey," he said softly. I didn't move, didn't speak. He stepped closer, slowly, like he wasn't sure if I'd throw flour in his face or call the cops. Maybe both. "This place is beautiful," he said, glancing around. "Smells like home." "Funny," I finally said. "You didn't treat it like home when you had it." He flinched. "I deserved that," he nodded. I don't know why I came here." I tilted my head. "Sure you do." He let out a breath. "I guess I thought maybe if I saw you, if I looked you in the eye, I'd find the part of me that used to believe I could do something real." "You could have," I said, "but you chose easy over honest." He looked down at his shoes, then back up. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said. "Hating you would mean I still carry you with me. And I don't." He was silent for a long moment, then pointed toward the glass case. "Can I try one?" "Which one?" I asked. He smiled, almost sheepishly. "The morning cloud." I hesitated, then grabbed a small plate and placed it on the counter. I didn't comp it. I rang it up like any other customer. He paid in cash. As he took the first bite, his eyes closed, just like the president's had. I watched his shoulders fall, like a weight had finally slid off. "This was always yours," he said quietly. "I just got scared that mine wouldn't be good enough." "And that fear cost you the truth," I replied. He nodded, then finished the pastry slowly, as if trying to memorize it. "Good luck, Caleb," I said, already turning back to the kitchen. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. Some stories don't need reconciliation. They just need closure. 2 days after Caleb walked into the bakery for the last time, I received something unexpected, a letter from my mother. Now, for most people, that might not seem strange, but my mother passed away 6 years ago. It arrived in a soft cream envelope postmarked from Tucson, where she'd lived before the cancer came. I recognized the handwriting on the front, my aunt's. Inside was a folded piece of yellowed paper and a note. "I found this while cleaning out the attic. I think it was meant for you. Thought you should have it now." My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. It was dated 4 months before her death. I'd been in culinary school back then, struggling with tuition, juggling late shifts at a greasy diner, and doubting whether I had what it took to be anything more than a line cook. The letter began, "To my Joy, I don't know when you'll read this. Maybe tomorrow, maybe years from now. But I want you to know something. You were born to feed people more than food. You feed their spirit, their belief, their hope. You always have. I've watched you turn flour into forgiveness, butter into bravery. Don't ever let the world convince you that your sweetness is a weakness. It's your weapon. One day, someone will try to take your magic. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of greed. But don't let that stop you. You're not just a baker, Joy. You're a storyteller, a healer, a light. Love always, Mum." I sat on the bakery floor and cried. Not the broken kind, the cleansing kind. The kind that feels like rain after a long drought. because she knew. Even then, she knew someone would try to steal my light, but she also knew I'd survive it. I framed the letter and hung it right above the register, so every customer who paid for a morning cloud could see the woman who believed in me before anyone else did. Sometimes, customers would ask who wrote it. I'd smile and say, "The woman who taught me how to rise, even when life doesn't." And that night, as I closed the shop, I whispered into the empty air, "I did it, Mom. I finally fed the world." I was restocking vanilla extract in the back pantry when my assistant, Harper, burst in holding the phone like it was on fire. "You need to take this," she whispered, eyes wide. "It's the White House." I blinked. "Again?" "No," she said, "not staff. It's him." My stomach did a strange little flip. I wiped my hands on my apron, took a breath, and answered. "Joy Martinez speaking." "Joy," said the familiar voice on the other end. "It's President Hale." You'd think after baking for the man, I'd be used to hearing from him. But this wasn't through a team. No assistants, no handlers, just him. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said. "Not at all, sir." "I wanted to ask you something personally," he continued. "Next week, we're hosting a private dinner. Just 12 guests, veterans, artists, teachers, and people who've made an impact this year. I'd like you to be there." I froze. "To cater," he chuckled. "Number to sit, to be honored. You've done more than make a good pastry, Joy. You stood up for the creative heart of this country. That matters." I couldn't speak for a moment. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Not without strings attached. "I'd be honored, Mr. President," I finally said. "Good," he replied. "Wear something nice, and come hungry." The line clicked off, and I just stood there, staring at the phone. Me, sitting at the table, not serving it. I told Harper. She screamed. The staff celebrated like we'd won the lottery. But that night, when I was finally alone, I stood in front of my mirror and whispered the same words I used to say when I was still nobody. "You're more than the kitchen. You're the story behind it." I bought a deep burgundy dress, the kind of dress you don't wear behind a counter or beneath a flower-stained apron, something soft, confident, new. When the night came, I was driven to the residence in a sleek black car. A Marine opened the door, and there I was, walking through a corridor of American history, not as a footnote but as a guest. And when I stepped into that golden-lit room and the president raised his glass to toast the guests, he said, "Here's to joy, the kind that fills you, feeds you, and makes you believe again." And for the first time, I believed it too. The dining room was bathed in golden light, the kind that makes crystal sparkle and silverware gleam like it's alive. A live quartet played softly in the corner, and the scent of rosemary and roasted vegetables drifted through the air like music of its own. I stood for a moment at the edge of the room, unsure where to go. Then the First Lady spotted me. She smiled, warm, real, and crossed the floor to greet me like we were old friends. "Joy," she said, taking my hands, "I'm so glad you're here. You've inspired a lot more than you realize." She led me to my seat, directly across from the president himself. The guest list was surreal. A retired librarian who built a community bookmobile. A high school art teacher who turned graffiti artists into muralists. A war veteran who ran a farm for therapy animals. And me, the girl who turned betrayal into a best-selling pastry. Dinner began. Plates arrived like artwork, lamb with mint compote, roasted pear salad, aged cheese from Vermont. But everyone kept asking one question. "When do we get your dessert?" I blushed. "I didn't make anything tonight," I said. The president leaned forward. "Yes, you did," he said. "You made every one of us hungry for honesty. That's more than dessert. That's history." The room went quiet for a second. Then people clapped. Real applause, not polite. I felt my throat tighten. After dessert, which was not mine, but still excellent, we all lingered. No one rushed to leave. Conversations flowed like good wine. Stories were swapped. Laughter filled the air. Then the president asked me one last question. Joy, what's next for you? Everyone turned toward me, and I realized I hadn't thought that far ahead, but the answer came anyway. I want to open a school, I said, a place where kids, especially ones without connections or money, can learn how to cook with heart, not just technique. Truth, the First Lady, lit up. Let us help. And just like that, what started in a cramped apartment with a stolen recipe was now heading towards something so much bigger than revenge or redemption. It was purpose, legacy. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just at the table, I was meant to be there. 1 year later, I stood in front of a red brick building with a hand-painted sign above the doorway that read, "The School of Sweet Justice, established by Joy Martinez." I wasn't wearing an apron, I wasn't holding a whisk, I was holding a ribbon-cutting scissor, flanked by 2 teenagers in chef coats we'd stitched ourselves. Alicia and Miles, my first 2 scholarship students. Inside was a converted community center, once forgotten, now reborn as a kitchen academy. 6 state-of-the-art stations, a walk-in fridge bigger than my old apartment, a mentorship office, and a wall filled with handwritten recipes from students' families, flavors from their lives. The funding came from a mix of small donors, one anonymous investor I had a pretty strong feeling was sitting behind a presidential seal, and thousands of customers who bought morning clouds with the knowledge that every bite funded someone's future. At the grand opening, people came from every corner of the city, local press, food critics, former teachers, even my high school guidance counselor who once said, "You're sweet, Joy, but maybe try something more realistic." I saved her a seat. I gave a short speech. I talked about flavor, about struggle, about how a stolen recipe didn't end me, it refined me, and how our school wouldn't just teach cooking, it would teach resilience, honesty, the kind of strength you only find when everything's been taken from you, and you rise anyway. After the ceremony, we hosted a tasting led entirely by students. Their dishes, incredible. But the most powerful moment came when Alicia presented a reimagined morning cloud. She called it the sunrise roll. Same heart, new hands. She served it to me on a white plate, her hands shaking just a little. I took a bite, and I wept. Not because it was perfect, although it nearly was, but because the legacy had already begun. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours, from my mother's kitchen, to betrayal, to the White House, to this, a school, a future, a table wide enough for every kind of dreamer. And I wasn't done yet. The day I first baked the morning cloud, I had no idea it would carry me this far. Back then, it was just something I made to feel less invisible. A quiet act of hope wrapped in pastry dough. A way to say, I'm still here, even if the world wasn't watching. Now, people all over the country were watching, tasting, believing. A month after the school opened, I got invited back to the White House, but this time it wasn't just to serve. It was to speak. The president had asked me to open a summit on American innovation with a keynote titled, "What Flavor Teaches Us." I stood behind the podium in that same burgundy dress, hand steady, voice clear, and I told them everything. About building something with love, about what it felt like to have it stolen, and about the fire that rises when you choose to create anyway. When I stepped off stage, the applause didn't feel like praise. It felt like a baton being passed, a signal that it was their turn now. That night, I returned to the school to find Miles and Alicia waiting for me. They'd stayed late to clean, but they had a surprise, a new recipe, one they'd developed together, blending Alicia's Puerto Rican flavors with Miles's southern roots. It was spicy, sweet, messy, beautiful. They called it the second chance roll. I took a bite and laughed through the tears. Because they didn't just follow in my footsteps, they were blazing their own. As I locked up the school and stepped out into the cool night air, I looked up at the stars and whispered the truth I finally believed with every piece of me. He stole my recipe. He got famous. But I fed the president. And now I'm feeding the future. One truth-filled bite at a time.